Hello, welcome back to Sometimes Katya. My name is Katie, sometimes I'm Katya. Today I thought I would take you through my 6-month check-in on my reading goal for 2023. My goal was to read 25 books by the end of the year. It is June 30th, the day I'm filming this, and in front of me, well, no, because some of them I don't have, and one of them was an audiobook, but metaphorically, next to me, I have 20 books, so I think we're well on our way to reaching 25 by the end of the year. This is not one of them. In here I have written down all of the books that I've read all year. There they are. And I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what I've read so far in chronological order. So first, you will notice a theme for the first few months is that I went on a huge YA nostalgia binge. And so I started January off by rereading the entirety of The Kane Chronicles by Rick Riordan. Riordan. I've never actually heard anyone say it out loud. I don't know. Mr. Percy Jackson, man. We all know who he is. We all love Uncle Rick. He's the best. I don't know why I didn't read Percy Jackson. Maybe that's coming up for me. I don't know. I don't have a plan yet, but I did start the year with The Kane Chronicles, because who doesn't love a bit of Egyptian mythology? Next, I read the Across the Universe trilogy, which is a YA sci-fi trilogy. This trilogy is about a girl who agrees to go on a 300-year expedition with her parents, during which she has to be cryogenically frozen, and then she's woken up early. And she has to adapt to life on the ship and also figure out why and who. So, bit of a mystery, but it's not written like a mystery. There just is a mystery. There's not really a thing to be solved. I guess there's a thing to be solved, but it's not written in a way where you can solve it, if that makes sense. It's just sort of a looming question that exists. It's not the greatest trilogy ever written, I will admit that, but it is heavily nostalgic for me, so I had a really good time revisiting it. And then last, to close out February, this was the first full 2 months of the year, to close out February, I did reread all of The Hunger Games, and we all know what The Hunger Games is. We all know what it's about. We all know what's going on with The Hunger Games. We all love The Hunger Games. Good time to be had by all. Next, I read Axiom's End by YouTube's Lindsay Ellis. Or I guess she's not on YouTube anymore, she's on Nebula, because she got harassed off of YouTube, which is super cool and fun. We love that. This is it's a first contact book, so it's sci-fi, it's got aliens in it, but it's about a girl who she's like 21. She has to be the mouthpiece for this one alien that has landed, doing like liaising and talking to the government and all of this stuff. And they become friends in the book. And yeah, it's very well written. Anytime a YouTuber writes a book, it's like, you're gonna have reservations, but this is extremely well written. If you like sci-fi, if you like first contact, things of that nature, if you like, intermixing, like dealing with mixing cultures and dealing with culture clashes, it's a great book. It is a period piece set in 2005? 2007. My apologies. It's set in 2007, so it is extremely 2007, very heavily, obviously 2007. It's a good time. I haven't read the sequel yet, but I do have it. And then for the rest of March, I was reading Axiom's End, through the beginning of the year. I finished it at the beginning of March. For the rest of March, I was doing a read or watch or listen to one thing a day and then write a response to it challenge thing that I'd done something like it in college, and I wanted to do an extremely fast-tracked version of that. In school for the class, I had to do just one response a week. In March, I tried to do one a day, and that was simply far too many. I want to do it again, but I would pare it down to 2 or 3 a week, just so you can have like days off where you don't have to spend extra time doing stuff, because sometimes you're busy. But during that month, I did assign myself to read 3 plays. So I did read 3 plays in March. I read Death and the King's Horseman by Wole Soyinka. It is a tale set in a Yoruba city, so it's in Nigeria, and it is about a king who has died, and in the tradition, when your king dies, the horseman of the king also has to be killed. He can't stay alive. So it is about that and like the ritual around that. I did kind of read this in a haze. Just sort of, I was like half asleep when I read this, so it was more of a visceral experience rather than me actually like taking in the plot. The language is very poetic. It's very intense, the story. But I would definitely recommend it. And then I read The Real Inspector Hound by Tom Stoppard. Classic Tom Stoppard. Like 2 guys watching a play, but who's actually the detective in the murder mystery that they're watching, and what roles do they play in the thing. It's very meta. I love Tom Stoppard, so I had a good time. Then I read Ghosts by Ibsen. This one is very heavy, but when is Ibsen not heavy? If you're familiar with Ibsen at all, with Hedda Gabler or with Doll's House, this is, this is also dark and heavy and a lot of drama. And then for something lighter for April, I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. If you're into D&D, excellent book, really good book. You don't have to know anything about D&D to enjoy it. It is about an orcish woman, who was in an adventuring party, a la D&D, but she gets this like talisman that's supposed to bring good luck, and she decides to hang up her sword and open a coffee shop. So it is very cozy. It's, about running a coffee shop and like finding people to help her build the building, and like sourcing ingredients and meeting people in this town that she's settling in and actually dealing with settling in somewhere instead of being an adventurer and a traveler. It's very good. It's very nice. It's very cute. I had a very good time with it. Absolutely recommend it if you're into fantasy. You don't necessarily have to be into D&D, but if you're a fantasy person, it's a good time. Or if you just like cozy, I'm learning how to settle down and like appreciate staying in one place for a while stories. In May, I read The Appeal by Janice Hallett. This is an epistolary novel about a drama group, like a community theater group in England, who is putting on a show, and then someone dies. It is a very slow burn. The murder doesn't happen until well past the halfway mark, but there's also a ton of other threads going on. The murder isn't the only mystery that's happening, and of course everything ends up being connected in the end. So there's a ton of setup before someone actually ends up dying, because all of those threads are being woven all the way through. Everyone's voices in this, especially with an epistolary style, are super clear. It is an extremely engrossing read. I really liked it, except I found the ending a bit anticlimactic, because there were a lot of like guesses and like, I don't know who did it. It could have been this, it could have been that, it could have been this. So when the truth was finally revealed, I thought it was still a wrong guess. And then I kept reading and it was, oh, that's the answer. So maybe that was just me being like, no, it's something else. That can't be it. That doesn't make any sense. So maybe that was just a personal experience. I loved the rest of it. I just found the ending a little anticlimactic. Like, oh, that was it? Oh, okay. But the whole rest of it, it's extremely well written, especially for an epistolary novel. I feel like epistolary novels are really hard to do right. And this one, it's set in contemporary times, so it's all like emails and text messages and, voice, what is it called when you leave a message on someone's phone? Voicemail. It's called voicemail. Really good. kind of ending, but maybe that was just me. Then after that, for the rest of May, I was reading The Genesis Machine, which I found at my local used bookstore. And it just, the cover looked so fun and silly, and like kitschy sci-fi that I was like, I have to read this. It's about this scientist who comes up with a new theory about like physics and molecules and particles and everything, and about like dimensions, and how there's like a whole other dimension that we can't see, and particles can travel through it, and they can essentially, like, from our perspective, teleport, but really they're just traveling through what he calls K-space. It's very heady. He, ends up working with this other guy, and they, work with some institutes, and they get a lot of money and a lot of grants, and they build a machine to be able to detect everything. And of course all the governments and stuff want to use it for like weapons and war and violence, and they're like, but we want to look at space. This book has a lot of jargon in it. This book has a lot of like science terminology and discussions just about like particles and math and things of that nature, and I love when books are full of jargon. Even if I don't understand it, I'm like, yes, speak to me in your language. Like, that's why I really like Michael Crichton books, is because when you read it, if they're looking at code on a computer, they don't just say, oh, we're looking at the code. They actually print the code in the book. If they're looking at a graph, the graph's going to be in the book. And I love that kind of stuff. I love when I'm like, yes, give me all the science details. I don't necessarily have to understand it. I'm just like, I want to know that you know facts. This book it was written it was published in 1978. So the whole premise is based on the fact that the author is saying that the Big Bang Theory is wrong, which is very funny to read. So it was just a fun sci-fi time. It was very fun. I don't know. I don't know how to sell it to people, because it's just like, yeah, this book says the Big Bang is wrong, and it's a lot of facts. One thing it does really well is the characters are very distinct. They have very, interesting and fun personalities, which I find, even in, again, Michael Crichton books, the men all just sort of blend together, and then there's like one or two women, but all of the men just kind of seem like this is a room full of generic men. In this book, they're all different guys. So if you're into really jargony sci-fi, if you're into sci-fi that's got a lot of, data and, talking about like how to excite the neurons or whatever, this is for you. And if not, absolutely don't read this. This is for a very specific audience. And then at the beginning of June, I'd finished Magpie Murders, which is a murder mystery within a murder mystery. So it is about an editor at a publishing company who receives a manuscript from one of her authors that is a manuscript for a murder mystery. And the last section of it, because it's written in sections, is missing. And once she finishes reading the manuscript and sees that the last section is missing, she also learns that the author of the book has died. So she's trying to figure out who did the murder in the manuscript and what happened to the missing pages, because you do get to read the entire manuscript. The first section of the book is just the manuscript. But then she's also figuring out, was the death a murder of the author? And if so, who murdered him? So it's two mysteries in one. I really liked the way that this book was written. It's very good. I clearly like murder mysteries. I like things like that. And getting 2 in 1, very fun, very good. Really liked it. It also gives you, if you're interested in this sort of thing, a little bit of a peek behind the curtain in the publishing industry. So, extremely fun book. Really liked it. The ending was surprising. I wasn't expecting it, but it also made sense. I do love figuring out who done it, but I also like being surprised. And this one was very nice, very good. I liked it. Definitely recommend this one. And then I don't have the copy physically with me because in June I was visiting a friend and I borrowed a couple of his books. But in June I read The Moth Keeper, which I actually found in a bookstore while we were together and thought he would like it, so I gave it to him. It is about a girl who lives in a nocturnal village in the desert, and they're all sort of like animal people. But because they're nocturnal, they have these moths that help pollinate this tree that's really important to their culture, and someone has to babysit the moths at night, essentially. And she begins moth keeping training, and it's about her journey through dealing with that, and it is beautiful. It's a very quick read because it's a graphic novel, but it's gorgeously drawn, and it's very heartfelt. It's very sweet. It was written by Kay O'Neill. And then the other book I borrowed from my friend was The Anomaly by Hervé Letellier, I think. It's a French book, but I obviously read the English translation. It is about a bunch of passengers on an airplane who go through an unexplainable temporal event. And that's really all I can say without giving away, like, all of the plot. And the last thing I finished this month was actually an audiobook. I was listening to Disney War by James B. Stewart. It is about most of the tenure of Michael Eisner as the CEO of the Disney Corporation. So it starts in the mid-late 80s when he first gets hired as CEO, goes through the 90s and the Disney Renaissance up until about, I think, like 2004, 2005. When the book ends, he hasn't, power has not yet changed hands to Bob Iger. So if you are into that period of the history of Disney as a company, it is fascinating to get, again, a peek behind the curtain, to learn about the corporate goings on, because we all know, like, the output of Disney through that time. We all know about the Renaissance and all of the, the resurgence of animated movies and the company coming back. But seeing, like, how that happened and what he did at the company and his rise and, not fall, but where his path as CEO took him, which was kind of a fall. He, clung to old techniques for too long, and people started to resent him for it, and it was no longer effective, and people wanted him out. So that was very good, especially as an audiobook. If it were a physical book, I don't think I would have been able to get through it. I probably would have fallen asleep. As you can tell, I don't really read much nonfiction. So getting it in as an audiobook was, I think, an excellent idea on my part. Sitting down and reading nonfiction, unless it's about linguistics, I don't have a ton of patience for. I don't like reading biographies. I find them interesting, but I don't like physically reading them. So having it as an audiobook to listen to while I was driving was excellent. It was very fascinating. So that is my 6-month roundup. I miscounted because I forgot to write down The Anomaly in my little book here. So I've actually finished 21 books. And it is now the end of June. So with 6 months left, I think I can read 4 more books in 25. We'll see how far I can take this and how much more I can get. But yeah, thank you for coming along on this book journey. And hopefully I will see you sooner than last time.